Chers collègues,
Ladies and gentlemen, if there are no objections, I suggest that the draft agenda be deemed adopted. Maybe I can just recall briefly the health rules that have been established by the Bureau of this Parliament in a mixed meeting, i.e. where people are joining the meeting remotely and also present. Everybody has to wear a mask except the chair of the session. This is a public meeting and is web streamed. There's interpretation in 6 languages: French, English, German, Italian, Spanish and Polish. In order to exploit the presence of our guests as much as possible, I suggest we move to the 3rd item on our agenda immediately, and I'll finish off the announcements at the end of the meeting. Let us move to the exchange of views with the Vice President High Representative Josep Borrell. Mr. Borrell, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, even digitally, being present. We have had an opportunity to discuss various things with your colleagues, Mrs. Jourova, Mr. Schinas and Mr. Breton, on various different initiatives of the European Commission, on the Action Plan for Democracy, the DSA, and the new strategy for cybersecurity in Europe. And we're very pleased to look at the external aspects of this with you, Mr. High Representative. We know that the European External Action Service does have a mandate to deal with the foreign interference in the EU, and we do speak very regularly with Mr. Lutz Gwellner. He is here. I'd like to welcome him. We also have spoken to your special advisor, Mrs. Natalie Toki. So now we'd like to hear from you, Mr. Borrell, the various orientations and political options that you intend to use on for us. This is a subject which is all the more important as it has been included on the agenda of the European Council. The Council is called to reinforce cooperation, strengthen that cooperation and coordination to prevent hybrid threats. On the occasion of our previous meeting, we underscored the importance and the key role of fighting this foreign interference through cooperation. And this cooperation takes various different forms. First of all, interinstitutional cooperation between the European institutions. Then we have cooperation with other international organisations, such as NATO, the G7. And finally, cooperation with third countries who share the similar democratic principles as the Union. In that framework, how does the EES intend to bolster cooperation to counter hostile foreign interference? Foreign interference takes very different forms. We see campaigns all the way up to disinformation and even cyber attacks. We know that Russia and China are main actors in these hybrid wars, these threats and these attacks, and they seem never to stop. Nevertheless, the EES still has not set up a specific task force on China, for example. This situation perhaps is depriving us of useful information on what is going on when we compare the situation with Russia. And the situation, is this going to evolve from here? Could you tell us what the EES is doing when it comes to attributing blame to the attacks and sanctions leading from that? An essential aspect of protecting our democracies is dissuasion here. Attacking our institutions, affecting our public debate and affecting our elections must come at a cost. What is the cost, for example, that the Kremlin is paying for these numerous attacks they have perpetrated? And what cost is the EU prepared to impose on foreign actors when they carry out hybrid wars against our democracies? Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the plans of the EEAS in terms of these aspects concerning dissuasion towards countries who are trying to shape to the foundation our democratic structures. So without further ado, I'd like to give you the floor, Mr. Vice President, High Representative, for 15 minutes. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Monsieur le Président, members of the European Parliament, thank you for your invitation. I appreciate very much the attention that this Parliament is giving to the challenge of foreign interference and disinformation, and the setting up of this special committee is certainly very timely. It allows for a comprehensive discussion on challenges we are witnessing to the very functioning of democracy and our interest. I would like to start by welcoming the first working document that was presented by the rapporteur, and I am looking forward to your final report. As you said, indeed, foreign interference poses a real threat to the European Union, to its member states, and to the open societies around the globe. It's a very intentional and coordinated attempt, not by accident, it's very intentional, to undermine trust and to mislead and manipulate, targeting our values and our interests. And it comes in many different and creative shapes. I have to recognize that the people who do that are very creative, online and offline, across border and affecting many sectors. It's what we say a hybrid threat, a new kind of threat to global security, and it's requiring a robust response and close cooperation between our different institutions, public and private entities, and with our like-minded allies. I hope that our exchange today will be an opportunity to reflect strategically on how to improve our response to these threats. Well, let's be concrete. What are we concretely talking about? Let's take the example of the COVID-19 pandemic. This event, the COVID-19 pandemic, has been providing us with a concrete showcase that it has been a real testing ground for new hybrid tactics. We have witnessed different state and non-state actors trying to abuse the global health crisis to advance their political or economic goals. Hybrid campaigns have been targeting our democratic values, our information space, and even our infrastructure, our critical infrastructure, in an attempt to weakening our societies and our democracies. That's what we call a battle of narrative, has been emerging, and it has been increasing first with mask scarcity and now today with vaccine scarcity. There are actors like Russia that have been disseminating and amplifying false or misleading information with an intention to undermine trust, to denigrate our democratic credentials, or to weaken our international alliances. Others, China can be an example, distort information, silence independent and critical voices, and make their own voice louder, intimidating others and reducing the space for free and open debate. You can say that, well, this is just propaganda. No, there is a border between propaganda and disinformation. These campaigns are particularly harmful in the context of the pandemic because they can actually put lives at risk. You remember the narrative about chlorine serving as a cure to the virus. And we have also seen pro-Kremlin outlets spreading claims that wearing masks is useless or amplifying voices against lockdown measures. The COVID-19 vaccines and the so-called vaccine diplomacy have been the focus of such actions recently with some actors, in particular, once again, Russia, either trying to discredit Western vaccines and vaccine manufacturers while promoting their own or using the offer of preferential distribution of their own vaccine in third countries to gain geopolitical leverage. For example, pro-Kremlin medias have been reporting extensively about alleged side effects of people even dying after receiving the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Dear members, we see that this threat does not only originate from the usual suspects. I have to recognize that In recent weeks, this committee has also been looking more closely at a number of different actors: Iran, Syria, ISIS. It's not only a problem within the European Union, but also affects our partners and our interests around the world, from the Western Balkans and the Eastern and Southern neighborhood to Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Disinformation has become an industrial scale. Problems with more and more actors using these tactics in different forms and different scales. For example, in the context of my visit to Moscow, the attempt to explore if we can reverse the deterioration of our relations and have a more constructive dialogue was not welcome at all by the Russian authorities, which did not appreciate me conveying matters of concern for us on human rights, starting with Navalny case, and the shrinking space for open voices in the country. In response, intentional and coordinated manipulations about what the EU stands for have been deployed, which the External Action Service quickly identified and publicly debunked several times in the last weeks. For example, there were claims such as the EU sanctions are illegal, which is fully unfounded, given that the EU has introduced sanctions in full accordance with European and international law, restricting the sale of military and dual-use equipment to Russia. You can find this and other regular analysis and exposure of disinformation and information manipulation by pro-Kremlin sources on our website EU versus Disinfo. There's a lot of information there, I'm sure you know, but please help us to disseminate, because it's a very important source of information about disinformation. Well, what else can we do? What else can we do about this? Over the past years, we have put in place new structures and innovative approaches to detect and expose disinformation, starting with the work of the Strategic Communication Task Forces, the STRATCOM, in the European External Action Service, implementing a mandate from the European Council that many years ago mandated the EES to work on disinformation, starting with Russia. Let me here particularly thank for your support, which has been crucial in order to have the financial means to develop this mandate. Then we have the rapid alert system, connecting all relevant EU institutions and member states. It has also proven to be very useful, particularly since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. These platforms facilitate the sharing of insights, data, and best practices on disinformation campaigns and the coordination of our response. Well, these tools work. They have allowed us to gain a much better understanding of the tactics and techniques employed by disinformation actors and to debunk and expose disinformation. But our approach is also to be present proactively with clear and strong messaging about us, about the European Union, and our policies. We have enhanced our strategic communication, providing factual information about the policies of the European Union, and however, believe that we still need to improve our work and act more coordinated with member states and like-minded people. We also bring our help to civil society in countries where the space to engage and to speak out is very much reduced by governments, by threats to personal freedoms, and even to their lives. They are a core pillar to fight interference and to dismiss censorship. In concrete terms, we have conducted workshops to counter disinformation with civil society representatives and journalists from Libya and Syria, and together with fact-checkers, civil society and media organizations in Georgia, we help to raise awareness on foreign disinformation. We have supported studies on disinformation and conferences on media literacy in the Western Balkans. This is in our neighborhood, but within the European Union, we have increased our cooperation and built a stronger partnership with civil society and private industry in a kind of a whole of society approach. trying to reach out with all people that could be engaged on this fight. And we have increased our cooperation with international partners like the G7 and NATO. In spite of all that, there is a clear understanding that more needs to be done. In our discussion at the European Council on Friday, the leaders called for greater cooperation and coordination to prevent and respond to hybrid threats, including disinformation, as the chairman of this committee has said at the beginning. Together with the Commission, we will follow up on this call. The services of my service is working on that in relation with foreign actors and external spectrum. Will seek to further strengthen our actions. Happily, we're not starting from scratch. We have many tools to respond to hybrid threats already. Our cyber diplomacy toolbox, which was launched in 2017, allows us to use the full range of diplomatic measures at hand to prevent, deter, and respond to malicious cyber activities. Remember that in July and October last year, the European Union imposed for the first time sanctions on individuals and entities responsible for significant cyber attacks, including those that targeted the heart of the German democracy, the Bundestag. In line with our new cybersecurity strategy, we will continue to work to help to protect governments, citizens and businesses against malicious cyber activities and to support our partners. And drawing on these lessons learned, I will also work to develop further the European Union toolbox for countering foreign interference with new instruments that will have to be designed together with the Member States and the Commission. We also need to improve attribution and exposure of disinformation campaigns, a common methodology and a way to collect systematic evidence on foreign interference across the EU. The input of this Parliament will be very much welcome, as it is your active contribution to our existing efforts through, for example, your parliamentarian diplomacy. Well, I think what I had to tell you. I thank you for your interest. I don't want to be longer. Let's give a space for questions and answers. Thank you for your interest, for your excellent work, and looking forward to continue your contribution.
Merci.